IWMI India is celebrating women in water science, policy and technology, from International Women's Day to World Water Day. We spoke to IWMI India scientists to understand gender in policy.
While doing fieldwork around South Asian agriculture, one is bound to notice that the work done by women in the field often goes unacknowledged, despite their involvement in more labor-intensive activities like grass patching and weeding. What was particularly intriguing to discover was that if a woman is required to work in the fields, it can be viewed as detrimental to the household's self-esteem or pride, particularly for the men in the household. The implication of this attitude towards women's work is that the social space and decision-making within agriculture becomes male-dominated, presenting challenges for women to access resources.
Given these cultural stereotypes and social structures that constrain women's involvement and visibility of their work in agriculture and water sector, we need policies that will make dedicated spaces and strategies for overcoming these constraints. For that, it is not enough for policies to target generic groups such as farmers, stakeholders, or communities, and instead need dedicated provisions for the specific issues faced by women in accessing resources, capacity development, and decision-making positions. We find from our policy studies that despite decades of research on women's work and gendered burdens in agriculture and water, that inclusion of women in agriculture and water policies is still weak. In addition to a policy prioritizing resources for women, it also needs to acknowledge and cater to the fact that on ground, women do not have easy access to policy benefits because of these structural constraints such as lack of asset ownership, education, mobility, and decision-making power. We find this exclusion or stereotyping of women in policy is particularly pronounced in energy policies, especially beyond the household space.
Over the years, it has been understood that women are involved in managing the water and energy resources at household level. Because of this, they have a better understanding of planning the resource availability, accessibility, and quality. Thus, in the last decade, policies have focused on involving women through participatory approaches for effective management of these resources. Despite this, policies have hardly recognized women's water and energy needs for productive purposes and their role in formulation of policies and programs. In most of the water and energy policies, exclusion is based on land ownership, lack of financial resources available to women. At IWMI, we are working on Nexus Gain initiative, and within it, we are trying to understand the gender and energy linkages at various levels and identify pathways which result into more equitable and transformative interventions.
While addressing this issue requires changes in social attitudes, there are definite interventions that governments and development organizations can make to increase inclusivity. Chief among them is to make interventions like training or providing subsidy or creating community organizations more targeted towards women farmers. However, it is important to note that such specific targeting of women farmers can often become token representation or a means for dominant groups to monopolize resources. To address this, often there is a need to acknowledge intersectionality and target women from marginalized groups specifically.
We ask our researchers, how can we make water science and practice more gender inclusive? Read their response.